because transition means that we are de facto inside the European Union for that period. And we are only actually out at the end of the transition. And that is a big shift in government policy and a big move away from the vote in June 2016.
We're no longer members, as you said, because for the reasons you cited. We don't have representation on the council, on the court and so on, although we're going to debate how we're going to manage that. I do not accept your description of that.
Will we accept new rules?
Now that's an area of some interest, because the time to put a rule into effect, regulation into effect in the European Union, the average is 22 months. The proposal we're having for the European Union moment, we leave over 21 months.
Let's start on Europe, Robin Walker. It's your department, before we come on to some of the other matters that were raised there. So if we leave in March 2019, there's going to be a transition period of perhaps up to 2 years. Throughout that 2 years, we will remain subject to the rulings of the European Court of Justice.
What we said very clearly is that we want to have access to the European market on the same terms. We think that's in the mutual interests of the UK and the EU to reach that agreement.
I'll come on to the single market. I'm asking you about the European Court of Justice. Do we remain under the jurisdiction of the ECJ for 2 years?
So the ECJ will still remain the Supreme Court over that market. And so, of course, therefore, where it rules on the rules of that market, we will have to take account of that. That is
we'll take account of one thing. We take account of rulings of the Supreme Court in the United States, but we don't follow them unless we want to. So let me just clarify. We will remain subject to the jurisdiction of the European Court until 2021.
If the implementation period, which we would seek to agree, would say under the same rules, under the same basis as our current membership. So yes, we would. So yes, it would continue. But it would be clear that we would be out of our membership of the European Union. We would be doing that for an agreed time-limited period, agreed between the two parties.
Well, you say we'd be out of it, but for most people, it would still feel like in, wouldn't it? We'd still remain a member of the customs union.
We would still continue to access the customs union on the same basis. Again, I think you've got to be careful in your definitions here, because I think if you talked to the EU, once we have left the institutions.
Right, but we would still be subject to the external tariffs of the customs union for another 2 years.
And the Prime Minister has been clear that would be the case.
And we would remain a member of the single market for another 2 years as well.
We would maintain our access to the single market on the same basis, under the same rules and regulations.
So we would have all the obligations of being in the single market, the customs union and the ECJ for another 2 years without actually any representation on the bodies that run these institutions.
So I think what we're talking about is an implementation period to make sure that we exit with certainty and stability of how things stand, that businesses and government have time to prepare. That's what the Prime Minister set out to achieve.
But it's not implementation, is it? It's continuity. Nothing really changes, does it? If you're in the single market, you're in the customs. Do we continue with free movement of people for 2 years?
It would provide continuity for businesses. What we've said on that front is that people will be able to continue to come here to work and to live and to contribute.
Will there still be free movement?
But the UK will want to introduce a registration process so that we can prepare for our future immigration.
But during the 2-year transition period, will there still be free movement?
People will still be able to come here on the same basis, but as I say, they will then need to register so that we can prepare for our new immigration system where we do actually take control.
If Mr Macron and Mrs Merkel, if she's still Chancellor, if they get together and introduce a transactions tax on financial dealings, something Mr Macron's very keen about, say they introduce that in the summer of 2019, do we have to introduce that tax?
I don't think it's possible to get something that significant and that controversial through the European system in
But they've done all the work for it.
I think realistically, as
but if they could, would we have to implement that?
I think what we've got to be clear about is the UK has played a role and will continue to play a role right up to the point of our exit as a member state in making these decisions. These decisions typically...
My question, Minister, is if they introduce something like a transactions tax during the transition period, do we have to implement it?
I don't believe that is likely to be the case. I think we're talking about a theoretical hypothetical
because there could be many. 2 years is a long while. You could do lots of things.